What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. It'll be, I guess, the first interview for the day. We've got about 3 or 4 really exciting guests lined up. My first guest, his name is James Bates. He's the founder and CEO and chairman of AdviNow Medical. They're essentially automating the medical practice. Yeah, so I love just the vision and everything that they're working on here. All workflows are essentially automated except for the medical decision. I was going to do a long introduction, but I'm going to just bring them on here. James, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Sunny.
So why don't you tell us, if you're okay, just to maybe kick it off with what is AdviNow? We'll keep it to maybe like under a paragraph or something now, but we'll double click on it, later on in the interview. But yeah, I would love to just start there.
Sure. So AdviNow Medical uses artificial intelligence to completely automate the medical practice. Now, when you say that, it's kind of hard to imagine what that means, but the AI engages with the patient before the visit. It predicts every single question the doctor will ask, and it asks the patient ahead of time. The AI will also predict what the treatment will be. It'll predict if the insurance company is going to pay for it or not. And it will give a one-page summary to the physician to use during the actual medical encounter. Once the physician confirms the diagnosis, the AI scribes, so it documents everything the physician needs to say, the assessment and plan, and then codes it and sends it out. So everything except the medical decision itself.
Fascinating. That's super interesting. So, I don't know. I always like to say it's I love to just kind of, my instinct is to want to geek out on the tech and the business side and everything. But I find sometimes the most interesting is like the person right behind them. And so I like to make my first episode usually around your story. And so I'm curious, where did you grow up and what kind of kid were you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, and I was a little rebellious, punk kid. And I loved to auto mechanics. I basically could fix anything, motorcycles, cars, anything that broke down, I loved to fix. I didn't really understand the electronic side of fixing things. So I went to school for electrical engineering. And that was where I learned that math is extremely important. And I became the math geek, if you will, and really dug into the core aspects of technology. I was lucky enough to be able to join Bell Laboratories out of graduate school and be part of the world's first digital cell phone chipset. And boy, from then on, I've been deep in almost every technical evolution that the world has seen for the past 30 years.
What was your first real job in tech?
That's at Bell Labs. Yeah, that's
Bell
when,
Labs.
yeah, I mean.
And what did you do there?
I was a research designer for the GPRS. So when you think about the cell phones, the very first digital cell phone chipset, that is, if you're using your phone today, you have 3G, and then when it gets worse, it goes to GPRS. That's like the very first digital cell phone chipset standard worldwide. And I had the opportunity to work on that out of graduate school.
Super interesting. So you ended up running $1 billion driver assist business. How does someone get from engineer to running a company that big?
Yeah, not quite the Elon Musk story that everyone likes to hear about today, but it definitely had lots of excitement for me. When I was at Bell Laboratories, I speak Japanese, and so they wanted me to go out to, at that time, the largest digital cell phone company in the world was NEC, which a lot of people can't imagine that. But if you're old like me, the NEC was the cell phone guy. And so they wanted me to go out there as a Japanese speaking engineer to handle some of the translation efforts of the technology and getting them up to speed using this very first chipset. And they wanted one of the core research guys to do that. That was me. Well, I went out to Japan and I was part of the Bell Labs Tokyo design team out there. And in 1999, they shut it down. And then the team out there said, well, hey, James, you're an engineer that can actually communicate well. Why don't you move to business development? And then they offered me a bunch of cash. So I figured, okay. And so I transitioned from core R&D to business development. And in that role, I had a phenomenal time. My job was to find core research in the labs, find customers that wanted to use it, and had a tremendous time working on the world's first passive optical networking system, which was deployed by NTT, which is, the AT&T of Japan. I partnered with Samsung. We worked on the DIM2 specification, which was based off of timing technology that the labs had. We worked with all of the computer manufacturers back then, and when USB first started to be deployed and Bell Labs was involved in the very first USB chipsets that were on the market in cell phones as well as in computers. So this all goes back to the 90s, of course, when all of that was first coming about, and we created, over $200 million of business in the space of just a couple of years with these new product lines. Then when the downturn hit, I decided I would jump and join a startup of people who also came out of Bell Labs, named Silicon Labs. And I had the opportunity to found the international operations for them. And that was a phenomenal opportunity there. And we took the business from zero to $500 million in the space of just 3 years. And so that grew phenomenally, and was with them for quite a few years, and then decided wanted to go back to the U.S. and move back to the U.S. I lived in the Bay Area with a company named Maxim, which is now ADI, or Analog Devices, and took over their IoT business. So it was a great run through there, and then from there, was in the Bay Area for a few years, and then moved to Arizona, took over the operations of Freescale. And my focus was the self-driving vehicle technologies. So we made the technologies that gives Tesla, Google Waymo, people like that, the ability to auto brake and auto steer, and did that for a while, and then sold that business. And now I'm into, AI and healthcare. So it's been a little bit of a long journey, if you will.
What's the through line besides, I guess, you?
The through line is just the fundamental technologies. So what I love about the past 30 years of my career is that I've been lucky enough to be involved in the fundamental technologies that are changing everyone's lives. In the 90s, it was cell phones. Then it was computer networking. Then it was IoT. Then it was fundamental AI in self-driving vehicles. Now it is core AI. We're a purely software company today. And in doing that, that whole round robin there, it really, really just changed the game of how we live our lives. And I've just been really lucky to be able to be in a position where I can participate in that.
That's fascinating. So your work took you abroad so much as well. So what did you see in other countries' healthcare systems that kind of like stayed with you?
Well, the people here in the U.S. are pretty spoiled. That's for sure. They know what healthcare can be. Now, the problem with healthcare in the U.S. is not everyone has what the healthcare can be. So it is an uneven system, which is true. But in Japan, it's a single payer system, probably similar to Canada, where you're at, Sunny Ray, and it is absolutely terrible. All care is rationed. You go stand in line for everything that you need. It's the least common denominator of how you get treated. Patient rights are essentially non-existent. It is. The example I always like to use is getting a mole removed. So I'm fair-skinned, and I get moles on my body that I need to cut off every probably year or two. In the United States, I go in, I see the dermatologist, they do a skin, they look at the mole, they say, yep, it's got to come off. They slice that thing off, and I'm in and out in an hour, and I'm done. And then they send me a message, oh, yeah, the biopsy came out clean, hopefully, and you're done. If the biopsy's dirty, of course, they come in, they do a lot deeper incision, and they do all other crazy stuff. But for me, the biopsies in general always clean. In Japan, the doctors don't get reimbursed for procedures. They get reimbursed per a time you see a patient. So in the United States, what is a one-time visit in an hour, in Japan takes you 5 visits over the space of about 6 weeks. You got to go back. So the first time you see a general practitioner, the general practitioner looks at the mole and says, yep, you got to see a dermatologist. You come back, you see the dermatologist says, yep, we got to take that thing off. You got to come schedule another time to come take it off. So then you come back, they take it off, and then they're like, you got to come back to remove the stitches because, we're going to cut all this out. Like, well, can you just tell me if it's good or not? And then they come back, they remove the stitches, and they're like, oh, if you want to get the results, you got to come back again. And so 5 times you are spending your day, and it's like a line you get in the morning, and, there's not really appointments. There's like windows, and it's just the worst experience on the planet. Now, the end result is the physician for the excision of that mole ends up getting about the same amount of money out of the government that the U.S. doctors get. So the government's not saving any money. It just forces patients to go 5 times for something that should be done in an hour or less. And when I talk to people in the UK, it's a very simple thing. See your general practitioner, and then you're scheduled for some specialist, and then you see the specialist, and they make you come back a number of times so that they can bill. So it's always a game of getting paid with whatever system that you have. So what I realized living overseas was that every country is the same. Everybody, if you spend a lot of time becoming a doctor, you want to get paid for it, right? And if you don't get paid for it, then you have a shortage of doctors, which some countries do. And that's not the answer to healthcare. What is the answer is to make it more efficient. Take it out of the hands of the administrators. And think about going and visiting the doctor 5 times. Administrators, how much work did they have to do? How much work did the doctor do? So in Japan, probably 80% of the cost of healthcare is administrative in nature. In the United States, it's 50%. I can speculate what other countries are. I haven't actually lived healthcare in other countries. But ultimately, from what I understand, whether it's Canada, whether it's the UK, whether it's Germany, all of these places that have evaluated my systems to use, they all have similar metrics. So if you want to cut the cost out of healthcare, it's not about, hey, one payer pays it, there's no competition, or, competition solves everything, which also doesn't work. It ends up being, how can technology actually eliminate a lot of the cost and allow the doctors to get paid well, because they have to study hard to go to school to do it, and they should be compensated for doing it, but without spending ridiculous time with the patient and being able to be efficient in what they do. So that really guided my thinking. And when I dove into healthcare after we sold, my last company, and I had a very strict non-compete, so I had to do something completely different. Healthcare was completely different. It seemed broken. I didn't really understand the U.S. healthcare at all at the time. But I decided to just come in and see what I could do. And as I dug in, I thought originally I would just buy medical practices and roll them up, manage them, get economies of scale, and turn them into real businesses. But the more I dug in, the more I realized that the problem is fundamental in nature, and it's unsolvable without technology. And so that's been a very high level overview of the journey there.
So did you ever picture yourself in healthcare, I guess, before you got into it? And the other question I had was like, when you go from like chips and, self-driving cars, all the way into like a medical company. Like which skills are you using from there in this new world?
Yeah, I mean, it's just standard engineering capabilities. So when
Mm,
I moved into healthcare, I didn't understand it. So I did what's called a Six Sigma lean analysis. So what does that actually mean? That means that you are measuring every single movement inside the medical practice. Well, in a medicine in medical practice, that's a bunch of humans, pushing papers, asking patients, measuring things, doctors diagnosing, billers. In a factory, you do the same thing. You're measuring every movement of the factory worker. So there's really no change in the methodology of optimization. It doesn't matter if it's medicine, it doesn't matter if it's government, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can measure every single movement that somebody is taking, or a machine is taking, or a process that a piece of inventory moves, then you can actually correlate that with an outcome you're trying to achieve. And that's the Six Sigma concept, right? And when you correlate it to the outcome you're trying to achieve, you actually find out that a bunch of stuff you're doing doesn't correlate. And so like, why are we doing this? So then you cut it out. Those are the lean principles. And so when I did that, a medical practice has three outcomes you're trying to achieve. Number one, you want positive outcomes for the patient. That makes sense. Doctors will define it in different ways, so I don't even try to define it. I just ask them, how do they define it? And then I just accept whatever they say. Number two, you want to be paid consistently and reliably for every patient that you see, which means you want to get paid. If you diagnose and treat a patient, you want to get paid for doing it. And number three, you don't want to get sued. You don't want liability. You don't want to destroy your whole practice because you tried to help someone and it went wrong. So there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of requirements, and then a lot of politics, as well as complexities around medicine of getting paid and not getting sued. And what that has meant specifically in the United States is, where the majority of my experience has been in this, the doctors spend 70% of their time trying to get paid and not get sued, and only 30% of their time practicing medicine. And that is the fundamental problem with medicine. Is it's not just true in the United States, it's true in every country. If you're spending 70% of your time trying to get paid and not get sued, then the doctor went to medical school for the wrong reason. If they're only spending 30% of their time for everything they went to medical school to do, but yet they spend 70% of their time doing other stuff, then are they really doctors? So our goal and what our slogan is AbbVie now allows doctors to be doctors once again. That's what we do. The doctors can actually be doctors once again. They get to practice medicine like they went to medical school to do, and they get to find their passion again. So many doctors are burned out. They're just sick of it all. And AbbVie now helps solve that problem, because we take over the getting paid or not getting sued, and we allow them to just practice medicine.
So you started looking at, I guess, medical practices to buy. What did the numbers show you? Was it this like kind of two
Oh, it's
thirds that?
terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, so if you think about a business, any business, Sonny, what would you say is the profit margin that a business should expect?
No, doesn't it depend on if it's a product or a service or what they're
It
selling?
depends,
Like, I
but do you
mean, for
think
a mom and pop shop, it's probably like single digit percentages. For like a Google, it's obviously, much, much, much bigger. I mean, it ranges, but
so? So what target businesses, even a mom and
mhm,
pop shop? I mean,
mm,
it all depends, but you want at least 10% net profit as a baseline. If you're
okay.
getting below 10% net profit, you're not really running a business, you're running a charity. I
Mm.
mean, ultimately, in medicine, the average profit of medical practices is 3% in the United States.
What?
Yeah.
That's surprising. Okay.
And Let me ask you a question. What do you think the Red Cross nonprofit profit is off of their operations?
I give up.
5%.
Mm.
The Red Cross makes more money selling blood than doctors' offices make curing patients. That's how
Crazy.
broken the medical practices are. And so if they're not real businesses. And when I analyzed them and I thought I'd just buy them up, I figured, they would maybe be high single digits, maybe 8, 9%, maybe you get a couple good ones that are in the mid doubles, 15%. Well, in the high technology world, like a Google makes 35, 40% net profit.
Mm-hmm.
In my previous life, our target was 40% net profit. Now, those are highly profitable, highly differentiated businesses that require a lot of R&D for that profit margin to be maintained. You have to invent a lot of stuff for that to be maintained. In a construction business on your home, those sit in the 10 to 15% margin business, right? I mean, so if you have a general contractor come in and build a home for you, they probably spend $1 million to build the home, and they sell it for 1.1 million. That's their profit, and that is somewhat expected because it's highly competitive. And when I looked at healthcare, I thought, why is it so low? And that's why I did that Six Sigma Lean analysis. And I literally walked in that medical practice with a stopwatch, and I measured the movement of every single employee, every single one. Now, it annoyed the employees. They're like, who is this guy measuring me? They kind of didn't enjoy that. But what I got out of it was not, hey, this employee sucks, this employee's great, right? I mean, that's what they're all worried about, is that type of measurement. What I got out of it was, these guys are doing a lot of things that a machine can do better. And that what they're doing is eliminating the human aspect of medicine, because humans are so worried about trying to be a machine rather than caring for the people who are sick. And unfortunately, that is across the world in healthcare today. Nurses spend more time typing in crap into the electronic medical record than they do caring for patients. Doctors spend more time trying to figure out what the rules and regulations are so that they can charge for this surgery or they can help this patient get better than they do actually helping the patient get better. And that's what AbbVie now solves.
You've said that nobody in healthcare really wants to cut costs. Can you walk us through how you figured that out?
Well, so that's a little bit tongue in cheek. I mean, I think people would like to cut costs, but the problem is that they're disincentivized to do so. So what does that actually mean? In the United States, the Affordable Care Act was passed in 2016. Part of the Affordable Care Act restrictions is that insurance companies can't make more than 20% profit. So you now have a ceiling on the profit that insurance companies can make. Now, the reason to write a law like that is that, hey, you don't want insurance companies making bank on the backs of patients, right? I mean, you'd say, hey, that's not a good plan. But the problem is that the pure dollar number of $1 million is 200,000 at 20% is 200,000. But if you have $100,000, it's only 20,000. So if you want to maximize your dollar profit, you need to maximize your top line. Where in other businesses, you get rewarded for having a highly profitable business. So you actually, their company's market value is higher for a company that, let's say, only has $500,000 of revenue, but they have 40% profit. So they have $200,000 of profit compared to another company that's $1 million in revenue with only $200,000 in profit. So now all of a sudden you've taken away the incentive of insurance companies to be efficient and to automate themselves. They have no desire to. If they lower costs, all of a sudden they have to reduce their premiums, which they reduce their profit to shareholders. The whole system breaks down because our politicians made it that way. So good intentions, destroy businesses. And that basically disincentivizes people to do the right thing. The same thing is true in hospitals, where in a hospital, if the hospital was to make a lot of money, all of a sudden, every patient that got charged a certain amount of money for a surgery is going to start complaining and saying, "Oh, why did you charge me $10,000 a day to get my back surgery?" or whatever it is, right? And so there's this massive backlash in the system, so that people are not incentivized to actually run healthcare as a business. They're incentivized to run it as a cost plus organization, which has no inherent incentive to reduce costs. And it's unfortunate, but it is just the law of economics. It's the way things work.
So can you tell us about Hannah? What does she actually do during a visit?
Well, Hannah is the name that one of my marketing guys gave our AI. So that is the AI that engages with the patient before the visit. Hannah will ask the patient every single question that the doctor will ask. Hannah will prep the orders that the doctor will want to place. Hannah will ask clarifying questions to determine what is the best treatment protocols. And Hannah will predict whether the doctor will be paid for the diagnosis and treatment, and submit that summary to the physician. So the physician still has the encounter. Hannah just collects all that information ahead of time. During the encounter, the physician then uses that information to have a real-time conversation with the patient. Oh, this is the data. This is why we're diagnosing you with, diabetes, let's say. And then it can say, well, it looks like Ozempic will not be paid by your insurance company because it'll be highlighted by the AI. So you'll need to go on metformin. And the patient would say, wait a minute, I want to try Ozempic. I'm kind of fat and I want to lose weight too. Isn't that what I should do? And the doctor could have that real-time conversation with the patient. Okay, we can try it. There's a high probability it will be denied, so you'll have to pay cash for it. And by the way, here's these other options that you could get, from other compound pharmacies at lower cost if you wanted to go that route for semaglutide. And the doctor could have that real-time conversation with the patient, where today the patient would come in, the doctor doesn't have any of that information. The doctor diagnoses the patient with diabetes. The patient says, I want a semaglutide. Doctor says, great, Ozempic it is, here you go. And then the insurance company denies it. And then the patient says, wait a minute, why is it denied? And the doctor has a call with the insurance company. The insurance company says, hey, we only will give it for patients who are 30% obese, 30% over the obese limit. This patient's only 25, sorry, they're not going to be paid. And so you can tell the patient no, and the doctor says, hey, look, your insurance company is terrible. I'm sorry. and that's the message to the patient. And the patient then says, my insurance company is terrible, but I still want it. What can I do, doc? And so that she has another appointment with the doctor. The doctor says, well, you can try these compound pharmacies, and you can order this for maybe only $100 a month instead of the $20 a month. And that back and forth takes maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So when AdviNow is used, all of that information's up front. They can have the real-time conversation with the patient, and they get solved in a day. Where the old method, the doctor's burning a lot of time going back and forth with that patient, back and forth with the insurance company to the same conclusion. And we're just fixing that whole back and forth to give the patient a better experience, give the doctor a better experience, and quite frankly, just pull a whole bunch of administrative bullcrap out of the system.
Hey, James, have you ever asked one of these AIs about a health issue?
I have.
And what's the verdict?
Well, Claude or Grok, or, you can go down the list, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Gemini, Google. They're all pretty good. They're definitely not perfect.
Mm,
So the good thing is that knowledge is now at everyone's fingertips. You can just ask the generative AI what you want, and it will give you an answer. The problem is that it's probably 80% of the time right, but it's 20% of the time wrong. So how do you know? And something like a Claude or an OpenAI, ChatGPT, these guys are incentivized to make you happy. So they learn all about you. You have an account with them, they learn all about you, and they're going to respond in a way that will please you. And so now you have some symptomatic, thing just trying to please you, not telling you what you actually need. And so if you're highly educated and you go across all the different generative AI solutions out there, you'll end up with something that I think is high quality and highly reliable. If you just rely on one and it knows you and is trying to please you, about an 80% probability it's accurate. So that's pretty scary for patients that have real conditions, because they could go in there with cancer and then the thing starts telling them, oh, all you have to do is use this peptide and you'll be cured.
mm,
And the reality is just not real, right?
yeah.
And so
Anyway, there's
it's
probably
a
a whole like podcast around that topic or something. But
yeah,
James, I want to just thank you though. We're at the end of our time here. Would love to have
sure,
you back. This is such a like enormous, kind of obvious problem that I'm sure everybody can relate to. That
totally.
you decided to take on. I read that you put in something like $10 million of your own money into it. I
I
mean,
did.
takes
Yeah.
a lot of conviction, and so I wish you the best of luck. I guess where do people learn more about AdviNow? Is it advinow.com, or what's the website, and where do people learn more about you?
Absolutely. www.advinow.com is the place to go. You can always send an email to info@advinow.com, info at advinow, advinow.com.
Awesome. Okay, with that said, I guess we'll bring this one to a close. Hang back a minute, James. I'm just going to bring this stream. Thank you all for tuning in. I see we have quite a few people listening. And yeah, until next time, cheers.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sonny.